Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Two of the games I feature prominently on my channel are HeroQuest and Advanced Heroquest. This has often led to people asking me questions like, will Hasbro do a remake of Advanced HeroQuest now? Are the two games compatible? Is Advanced HeroQuest the same as HeroQuest Advanced Quest? Would I like one if I like the other? A lot of these questions I have addressed in other videos, but I thought it might be beneficial to try to put together a comprehensive video on the subject, and here we are. I apologise if I'm treading too much old ground. First things first, MB Games were not involved in the development of Advanced HeroQuest. While Games Workshop were involved with the development of HeroQuest, providing miniatures and loosely housing the game within their Old World Warhammer setting, Advanced HeroQuest was entirely the product of the Games Workshop design studio, with Jervis Johnson assuming the role of game designer, and Avalon Hill couldn't remake it even if they wanted to. Eagle-eyed gamers will notice that the Q in Advanced HeroQuest is actually lowercase, and even when every letter is capitalised for the logo, the Q is still smaller than the H, making it different from the classic HeroQuest branding. The nature of the agreement between the two companies seems clear enough. Games Workshop provided lovely miniatures and a setting for a family board game with mass appeal, in return having the opportunity to capitalise on the familiarity of the brand to lure more people into their world of tabletop hobby gaming. Hence, many people like myself were duped into buying a game that they thought would be like HeroQuest, yet turned out to be rather different. By extension of that point, Advanced HeroQuest is nothing to do with HeroQuest Advanced Quest Edition, also known as the HeroQuest Master Edition in some territories. The Advanced Quest Edition is just the core HeroQuest game with some extra mercenary miniatures and an extra large quest to play through spanning 4 boards. It may have extra stuff in the box, but it's still HeroQuest and doesn't really introduce any new rules or complications that would earn it the Advanced title. It's certainly nothing to do with Advanced HeroQuest, as confusing as that may be. So Games Workshop made a game that's different, but that's not to say it doesn't share any of HeroQuest's DNA. There are clearly similarities, and those similarities go beyond the name and the cheeky box art that shows the classic lineup of HeroQuest heroes fighting classic HeroQuest villains. Both games originally shared the same Warhammer setting, although HeroQuest barely dips its toe in, while Advanced HeroQuest is fully submerged. HeroQuest, for the most part, does stay very generic, with the exception of themes, a few names and a map of the old world on the back of the European rules for Return of the Witchlord. HeroQuest could be set just about anywhere, and its displacement from the original setting for Avalon Hill's new edition is barely noticeable except for the introduction of the abominations and the wholesale switching of the word chaos with dread. Both games also feature heroic parties with very similar formats. HeroQuest gave us the classic lineup of Elf, Dwarf, Wizard and Barbarian. Advanced HeroQuest adds its own twist, switching out the Barbarian for a human fighter and transforming the Mage Warrior Elf into a Woodland Archer. The Dwarf and the Wizard remain almost identical, with the Dwarf still being the go-to hero for disarming traps and the Wizard being denied access to decent armour and weapons while instead having a selection of spells that can only be used a limited number of times per quest. Although in Advanced HeroQuest, that limit is based on access to necessary ingredients rather than each spell being one use. The switch for the Elf is one of the biggest changes, with a focus on ranged combat and a bonus ability for taking initiative at the start of a fight. This makes sense as ranged combat does play a much larger part in Advanced HeroQuest. Then there's the artwork. Advanced HeroQuest is one of the most beautiful games, and the rules book incorporates some of the best line art from some of the most brilliant fantasy artists. The involvement of Gary Chalk, who drew all of the floor plans and counters as well as contributing art to the rules, gives Advanced HeroQuest an air of familiarity, and that alone creates sinews of connectivity with HeroQuest, where his art was an essential component of the game's distinctive aesthetic. But here he isn't alone, as his work gets to sit alongside masterpieces from the likes of Fangorn, Paul Bonner, Adrian Smith and Wayne England. To this day, the Advanced HeroQuest rules book is my favourite rules book to flick through just to admire the art. And there are other connecting threads too, minor things mainly. While missions in Advanced HeroQuest do incorporate randomly generated maps, they also have pre-generated sections of each dungeon for the game's master to work from. Doors are only 1 square wide, leading to the same bottlenecking issues that plague HeroQuest. There are traps to disarm, and there are monsters to fight. They are both dungeon crawlers after all. But once you are playing Advanced HeroQuest, you will quickly understand that it's a very different beast. Randomly generated dungeons, a much more sophisticated turn structure, more options for heroes, a deeper combat system, activities to undertake in time between quests, leveling up your heroes, an extensive selection of enemies, and dozens of random encounters and hazards, all make it a much larger, more immersive world than what HeroQuest initially presented. But that does mean the complexity also spikes dramatically. Advanced HeroQuest is by no means a hard game to learn, but it's quite a few steps up from HeroQuest. Anyway, I could make a whole video about how different the two games are, but I think the best thing to do is direct you to my deep dive look at the rules for Advanced HeroQuest, which I will link to in the video description below. If you watch that, you will get a good understanding of just how different the two games play. And yet, HeroQuest is still an almost essential tool for Advanced HeroQuest players. Indeed, I have said before how I now use Avalon Hill's new edition of HeroQuest when I want to play HeroQuest, while my original 1989 copy of the game has become an expansion pack for Advanced HeroQuest. And that's because almost everything in the box is useful, and Games Workshop incorporated many rules for using HeroQuest components. To start, you can use all the heroes. Advanced HeroQuest has rules for creating your own characters from scratch, rolling up stats and equipping them as you wish, within the limitations of your rather light coin purse. So you could create a character that matches any of the original heroes in appearance, although be aware that the character creation system isn't that in depth, and besides equipment, there is no functional difference between a barbarian and a human fighter. Basically, you decide your fighter is going to be a barbarian by spending all your money on a really big sword, rather than any armour. However, Games Workshop went one step further and actually introduced pre-generated characters for each of the 4 heroes. And in a fun little nod to the lore of HeroQuest, they named the heroes after the original characters who stood up to Morcar: Rogar the Barbarian, Ladril the Elf, Telor the Wizard, and Durgan the Dwarf. That being said, the names are the only real connection to HeroQuest's plot. Advanced HeroQuest does not offer a continuation of the adventure to slay the Witch Lord. Morcar isn't the main nemesis. It's totally separate. Interestingly, to allow for the elf to be a fighter mage, they made him a high elf. This means he has limited spellcasting abilities, but can still equip regular weapons. Next, you can use all of your monsters. HeroQuest is a fantastic source of period-accurate enemies, and you will need them to really enjoy Advanced HeroQuest, because while the game includes rules for an extensive range of foes, out of the box you only have access to Skaven. With HeroQuest in your collection, plus the expansions, you have access to enough enemies to run Goblin and Orc dungeons or Undead dungeons, plus you will have some Chaos Warriors and a Chaos Sorcerer. There are, however, a few anomalies. First of all, the femurs from HeroQuest are the wrong size. They are supposed to be large creatures that cover 4 spaces. I just run them as small sized creatures. I'm fine with that. The other big anomaly is about the Gargoyle. We all know HeroQuest Gargoyle is really a bloodthirster, and it just so happens a bloodthirster is one of the nastiest things Advanced HeroQuest can throw at you. But once again, the sizing is all wrong. Bloodthirsters are huge and should fill 4 squares. It's easy enough to work around, but it does feel like the HeroQuest Gargoyle is more like a proxy for the real deal. In addition to all of your miniatures, you can also use the furniture. When you enter a room, you can roll on a chart to see if there are any furnishings. Not every piece of HeroQuest furniture is covered, but there is a chance of stumbling across a weapons rack, a cupboard, a table, a fireplace, a bookcase, or a rack. Of those items, there are special rules for the fireplace, the cupboard, the weapons rack, and the bookcase. Of course, there is nothing stopping a games master from making up additional rules, or just throwing other items of furniture into their pre-generated dungeons for added colour. In this regard, HeroQuest becomes something of a toolbox, and that extends to the cardboard tokens in HeroQuest. All of the counters and room overlays fit with the Advanced HeroQuest map tiles, so you can use them to create any custom scenarios you would like. You can even use the HeroQuest board in your games of Advanced HeroQuest. You use it as a maze, which is either accessible by descending a flight of stairs at the games master's discretion, or else by finding access to the maze through a trapdoor in a randomly generated dungeon. There are completely different tables to use for randomly generating the contents of the rooms and corridors in the maze, but of course, the Games Master could also use the board for a pre-generated part of the adventure. And even the quests from HeroQuest can be replayed using Advanced HeroQuest rules. The included rules are incredibly threadbare, but they are a good jumping off point for a Games Master to expand on. Simply put, you use HeroQuest rules for placing monsters and searching, but Advanced HeroQuest rules for movement, combat and magic. It's probably a good idea to use the pre-generated characters for the 4 HeroQuest heroes if you intend to give this a go. To help facilitate playing these missions, Games Workshop also translated all of the magical items from the HeroQuest core game to fit their rule set. That's all of the potions and artifacts. However, they only provided rules for those cards that were in the original European release of the game, so if you are used to the North American release of the game, there will be some extra artifacts you will have to figure out for yourself, namely the Spell Ring, Ring of Return, Elixir of Life, Wizard's Cloak and Wizard's Staff, although they are all easy enough to convert. To put it another way and cut to the chase, everything in your HeroQuest box, with the exception of the dice, is usable with Advanced HeroQuest. And that just about covers it, other than to say, despite how much content for HeroQuest you can reuse, Advanced HeroQuest is very different. Just because you like HeroQuest doesn't mean you will like Games Workshop's spin on the formula. Both games sit in my top 5 list of best games ever, but while HeroQuest holds the number 5 spot, Advanced HeroQuest sits at number 4. I think it's a better, richer, deeper, more engaging experience. So, there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.